Now moving on, here in Britain, the UK Independence Party have won their first seat in Parliament on Clacton-on-Sea. They came close to taking the traditionally safe Labour seat in Heywood and Middleton in Manchester, also coming only 617 votes behind Labour. Sarah Sai has been following this story.
Once a thriving seaside resort, Clacton-on-Sea is now officially rated as one of the most deprived areas in the country. As Britons turned to cheap foreign package holidays in the 1980s, the town became better known for its retirement homes, arcades and bookmakers that now dominate the town centre. Clacton had previously been a safe Conservative seat, but today became UKIP's first parliamentary win. Ex-Conservative MP Douglas Carswell, who defected to UKIP in August, won a huge margin with over 60% of the total 50% turnout.
Carswell, John Douglas Wilson, commonly known as Douglas, UK Independence Party, UKIP 21,113.
I resigned from Parliament to face this election because I answer first, foremost and last to you. You're my boss. I will not let you down.
In another by-election in the traditional Labour stronghold of Heywood and Middleton in Manchester, UKIP came a close second with almost 39% of the vote. This by-election had faced some controversy when UKIP candidate John Bickley was accused of exploiting the 2012 scandal of sexual grooming gangs in neighbouring Rochdale for political gain, using a campaign leaflet to accuse Ed Miliband's party of ignoring the sexual abuse of young girls because of political correctness. Now UKIP have their eyes set on Rochester, which will be having their own by-election next month, following another Conservative defection to UKIP.
We will win in Rochester and Stroud, and we'll win for the same reasons that we won here in Clacton, and that is because Mark Reckless, who also left the Conservative Party, he didn't defect, he resigned on a matter of principle to give the voters a say. And what we saw in Clacton, and I believe what we'll see in Rochester, is people respecting honesty, integrity and courage in politics.
There's little prospect of UKIP, which wants a British EU withdrawal and strict curbs on immigration, winning more than a dozen of the 650 seats in the national election in May next year. But the results are significant, and for many, UKIP's populist right-wing politics are deeply worrying. Today, the Islamic Human Rights Commission was one of many Muslim groups that have expressed concern over UKIP's successes, drawing attention to some of the anti-Islamic comments that some of its members have made in the past. During local election campaigning last year, UKIP's Brent candidate described Islam as a totalitarian ideology that is against everything modern Britain stands for. Days later, its Basingstoke candidate said anyone who does not fear Islam is a fool. And in 2010, the party's leader, Nigel Farage, called for a ban on Islamic face veils. Now there will be pressure, no doubt, on David Cameron to become more Eurosceptic and to take an increasingly harder position on immigration in order to hold a divided party together. In Labour ranks, there'll be pressure to reconnect with the working class votes that are at risk of being lost to UKIP. So, with 7 months to go for the UK general election, UKIP's successes are likely to force a shake-up in UK politics like we haven't seen for a while. Sarah Say, The Report.
With me to discuss this, Labour MP Andrew Slaughter and UKIP MP Amjad Bashir. Thank you both for joining us. Amjad, can I come to you first? How big a win is this for you?
It's massive. It's a sensational victory. It marks a new chapter in British politics. It shows a new party emerge. We've only been going for 21 years and we managed to get our first MP. It took the Labour Party well over 60 years to do the same. In the meantime, we've also won the European elections. We've got 24 MEPs. We've got hundreds of councillors. It's a phenomenal success.
Amjad, but your politics have been described as divisive. How do you think this sort of success and the rise of your party feels to minority communities like the Muslim community here in Britain?
I think these are allegations, false allegations, made by our opponents who don't want us to do well. If you scrutinise our policies, they're based on sound principles. These accusations are false. They're
But
wrong.
we just saw their comments from members of your party, such as your leader, calling for face veils to be banned.
No, let's put this in context. Our policies are what you should judge us by, not some comments or tweets made by individuals at different times of the day. I think our policies are sound. On immigration, we have a policy which encourages people to come to this country that are going to add value to our country, that are going to do well for themselves. What we don't want is a discriminatory policy of immigration, which we have with the EU, which says that anybody of the 28 nations that make up the EU has a right to come to this country, which is 500 million people, and it discriminates against the people of the Commonwealth. You will appreciate, I myself was born in the Commonwealth country of Pakistan. I'm a Muslim. My parents and myself came to this country. We've added value to ourselves and this country. We're proud immigrants, and we as a party recognise the contribution that immigrants have made. What we're saying is open, unregulated immigration is wrong. What we want to do is introduce a points-based system similar to Australia, and I think there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Thank you, Amjad. I want to bring in Andrew to this conversation. Andrew, are you worried for the Labour Party? You very nearly lost one of your seats.
Well, I'm worried about UKIP because I'm worried that people don't know what the party is actually like. I actually spent about 4 hours yesterday ringing voters in Heywood and Middleton, Labour voters, to ask them to vote. Labour voters generally did go and vote there. I think I only found 1 in 100 people who'd switched from Labour to UKIP. But what happened was the Tory and the Liberal votes collapsed completely. The Liberals down by about 80%, the Tories by about 60-70%, and those votes appear to have gone to UKIP. Now, that is worrying, and we are not complaining about this, and we're taking it seriously. But I think that once UKIP come under the spotlight and people realise what an extraordinarily extremist party they are. I mean, people were saying to me yesterday, well, they're a new party, let's give them a chance. We hope they'll be okay on the NHS. Well, their policy is to privatise the NHS. Their policy is to give tax cuts to the richest, have flat taxes so everybody pays the same thing. They're run by a guy who's a sort of multi-millionaire. They're no friend of anybody other than the super rich. But I think we do need to worry about them because clearly there is because they're the new kids on the block. They're sending a message out there. But they didn't do much damage to the Labour Party yesterday. What the problem, I think, is they're doing incredible damage to the Tory party. Now, you may say, why as a Labour MP am I worried about that? Because actually there's a great similarity between these extremists in UKIP. And you saw Nigel Farage saying today that, foreigners shouldn't be let into the country if they have contagious diseases. I mean, that sort of scare politics is something I never thought we'd see in this country. But there's a lot of people in the Conservative Party who agree with that politics, which is why you're seeing Conservative MPs defecting to them.
Andrew, I just asked Amjad about some of these issues, and he said it's often taken out of context, and tweets and things like that are put into places where actually they're misrepresenting his party. Well,
I was talking about what the leader of the party, Nigel Farage, said. It was on the front page, I think, of the Guardian today, that he said that if somebody came the immigrants should not be allowed into the country if they're HIV positive. I mean, just that language is so.
Can I just put that down, Amjad, Andrew?
When he was challenged on that, he said, well, I don't think people with tuberculosis should either. I mean, this is absolutely discriminating.
Andrew, let me put that down, Amjad. Amjad, you've just heard what Andrew said. These sorts of comments coming from the leader of your party, that can't have been taken out of context.
I think these are scare stories. This proves that our opponents will go to any lengths to denigrate our policies. Our policies are far from what has been expounded. I think it's right for a country's government to control people coming in. If they've got diseases which are contagious, which are going to endanger the lives of our citizens, it's right that we protect our nation from people coming in with Ebola, TB or others, so we make sure that these diseases do not spread. What's wrong with that? And the other thing I want to say, that we've never said that we want to privatise the national health. The national health is a prized asset that we have. What we have said is certain areas of procurement in the national health we could look at to make it more effective. We always believe that the NHS and the provision of healthcare should be at the point of requirement. No ifs, no buts. So these people who are opponents should not be representing falsely our policies. You ask me anything about my policies, our party's policies, and I'll answer you fairly and squarely. And they should stick to their own policies, and they should tell us what their policies are.
Andrew, Amjad said you need to stick to your own policies and tell them what your policies are. Is there a lack of policy and is there a lack of direction coming from the main parties that's showcasing the rise of UKIP?
There isn't, and I'll answer that question, but I don't want to let your other guest off the hook because they have this terrible way of saying outrageous things to appeal to a bigoted audience and then pretending that they're a mainstream party. I was reading from a BBC website. Let me just read it again. Mr. Farage told the BBC, said he wanted to control the quantity and quality of people who come to UK, people who do not have HIV. Mr. Farage later told the BBC he would extend the ban to people with tuberculosis too. Now, that is not just an humanitarian point. I'm proud of the British Army going out to Sierra Leone to help control the Ebola outbreak. That's what I think is best about British people, whatever their origins may be or whoever they are. People like Farage, they say these things not just to be taken literally because they want to basically send a message about, quote, foreigners, unquote. That's that sort of divisive and quite disgraceful politics. And your other guest should be able to defend that. He shouldn't say these are scare stories. This is what the leader of his party is saying. Let me briefly answer your question now, which is, what does the Labour Party stand for? The Labour Party stands, as it always has done, for equality. It stands for fairness, and it stands particularly for those parts of the welfare state that help those people who do not have the means to be able to afford everything that the millionaires like Mr. Farage can. Things like the NHS, things like the welfare state, things like legal aid.
Well, as much as I'd like to continue this conversation, unfortunately, that is all we've got time for in tonight's programme. I want to thank all of my guests on tonight's show and thank you at home for watching. Remember, you can keep up with our Twitter conversation following @IslamChannel and @IslamChannelCA and tweet us using #TheReport. We're back on Monday at the same time. But for now, we'll leave you with some footage from Italy where flash floods have swept through the northwestern Italian city of Genoa, smashing shop windows and washing aside cars. At least one person has already been confirmed dead. On that note, good night.